Minneapolis, 2080. The city everyone said would die became the place everyone wants to live. While the Sun Belt burned and coasts flooded, the frozen north became paradise. Average winter temperatures rose from -10 to a tolerable 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The climate catastrophe that devastated everywhere else made Minneapolis perfect. 8 million people now call it home. This is the story of how the coldest major city became the hottest destination, and how winter became humanity's salvation. It started with climate refugees. Phoenix hit 140 degrees in 2042. Miami was underwater. Los Angeles burned annually. Meanwhile, Minneapolis winters became milder, long but manageable. The upper Midwest, once population loser, became climate haven. Between 2045 and 2065, 4 million people migrated north. They brought wealth, skills, and desperation. Minneapolis didn't just accept refugees, it recruited them. Geography is destiny. Cold became advantage. The city that mastered winter became innovation capital. When you solve life at -20, you can engineer anything. Cold weather technology developed in Minneapolis exports globally. Thermal energy storage, advanced insulation materials, cold climate batteries, heating systems powered by frozen lake water. The brutal environment forced creativity. Necessity bred invention. Adversity created advantage. Minneapolis proved that harsh climates produce resilient people and revolutionary technology. The skyway system expanded dramatically. What was 7 miles of enclosed bridges in 2020 became 80 miles by 2080. You can live, work, shop, and play entirely indoors for 6 months. Downtown Minneapolis is vertical city with horizontal city suspended above it. Ground level is for summer. Second-story level is for winter. Architecture adapted to climate completely. Buildings aren't fighting winter. They're embracing it as design principle. Lakes remained central to identity. Lake Calhoun, now BDE Makaskagan, froze solid for 4 months annually. But instead of abandoning frozen lakes, Minneapolis innovated. Heated ice rinks, illuminated ice fishing villages, underground lake bottom restaurants, with views upward through ice. Winter activities became year-round economy. Tourism increased during winter, not despite it. The lakes that defined summer Minneapolis now define winter Minneapolis even more. Elena Rodriguez fled Houston in 2051 when heat became lethal. She'd never seen snow. First Minneapolis winter nearly broke her. But the city provided cold weather training, adaptation support, and community. Now she runs a thermal engineering firm employing 200 people. Her story is Minneapolis' story. Refugees who arrived desperate became citizens who built the future. Migration wasn't burden. It was opportunity. Minneapolis understood that before anyone else. Housing architecture evolved radically. Traditional homes couldn't handle the population influx and climate demands. New buildings are thermal fortresses, foot-thick insulation, triple-pane windows, passive solar heating, geothermal systems. They generate more heat than they consume. Housing became energy positive. The efficiency wasn't just environmental, it was existential. In climate where cold kills, buildings are life support systems. Architecture became survival technology. The food system transformed completely. Growing season is 4 months. Traditional agriculture is impossible. Minneapolis became world leader in vertical farming and greenhouse technology. Heated agricultural towers produce food year-round. The city grows more vegetables per capita than California ever did. Scarcity bred innovation. Limited outdoor growing forced indoor perfection. Minneapolis exports both food and farming technology. Adversity created advantage. Limitation produced leadership. Surprisingly, outdoor culture intensified. Minnesotans didn't retreat from winter, they conquered it. Winter festivals run November through March. Ice sculpture competitions. Frozen lake marathons. Outdoor hockey leagues. Cold weather fashion shows. The attitude shifted from enduring winter to celebrating it. Cultural identity coalesced around winter mastery. Being tough enough for Minneapolis became source of pride. Winter became brand. Cold became culture. The university system exploded. University of Minnesota became global powerhouse in climate adaptation research. Students from India, Brazil, and Nigeria study cold weather engineering. Tuition revenue funds city infrastructure. Research breakthroughs happen weekly. Nobel Prizes are routine. Education became economic engine. Knowledge became export. Minneapolis proved that universities matter more in climate change world. Solutions require research. Research requires institutions. Minneapolis invested accordingly. Mental health outcomes surprised everyone. Despite long dark winters, depression rates decreased. Psychologists discovered that predictable hardship creates resilience. When everyone faces same challenge, winter, community bonds strengthen. Shared struggle creates solidarity. Unlike climate disasters elsewhere that strike randomly, Minnesota winter is reliable adversity. You prepare together. You endure together. You celebrate spring together. Collective challenge builds collective resilience. Mental health requires community. Winter provides it. Transportation evolved uniquely. Personal cars nearly disappeared. Impractical in heavy snow. Light rail expanded to cover entire metro area. Heated bus shelters every 2 blocks. The system is free, funded by taxes on wealthy newcomers. But winter also brought innovation. Snow melting streets using geothermal heat, autonomous snow removal fleets. Heated bike lanes operating year-round. Minneapolis didn't eliminate winter obstacles. It engineered solutions. Infrastructure adapted. Technology conquered climate. The corporate headquarters migration was strategic. Companies relocated specifically for climate stability. Target expanded. 3M doubled. But dozens of new companies, data centers that benefit from natural cooling, cold storage logistics, thermal technology firms, chose Minneapolis because winter is advantage. The climate that once deterred business became attractor. Cold means free cooling for servers. Winter means reliable conditions. Disadvantage became selling point through reframing and innovation. Indigenous leadership became central. The Dakota and Ojibwe communities who lived here for millennia knew winter survival. Traditional knowledge about cold weather living, seasonal adaptation, and sustainable harvesting informed modern policy. Land acknowledgement evolved from gesture to genuine partnership. Tribal representatives sit on city council. Indigenous design principles shaped new architecture. Reconciliation and climate adaptation merged. Survival required respecting those who always survived here. Crisis created listening. Children raised in New Minneapolis show remarkable characteristics. They're comfortable in cold that would hospitalize their parents' generation. Adaptation happened physiologically. Studies show increased brown fat tissue and cold tolerance. Evolution in real time. But more importantly, they're psychologically resilient. Comfortable with discomfort, patient with seasons, connected to community. Winter childhood creates different humans. Hardship breeds strength. Cold creates character. Art flourished unexpectedly. The long dark winters created hunger for beauty. Theaters, galleries, and music venues multiplied. Artists from California and New York fled cultural collapse for Minneapolis stability. Creative class found refuge. But the art also changed. Incorporating winter themes, ice as medium, darkness as canvas. Light installations during dark months. Ice architecture competitions. Shadow plays. Art adapted to environment. Creativity found new forms through constraint. Healthcare evolved to address unique challenges. Vitamin D deficiency, seasonal affective disorder, and cold-related injuries required specialized care. But Minneapolis hospitals became world leaders in preventive medicine. Universal access to light therapy. Mandatory wellness programs. Proactive mental health care. The healthcare system that addressed winter challenges became model for comprehensive care. Specific problems drove general solutions. Local excellence became global model. The concept of hygge, evolved into municipal policy. Danish and Norwegian immigrants brought cultural knowledge about winter thriving. Cozy cafes, warm gathering spaces, community fireplaces, candlelight everywhere. Minneapolis formalized cultural wisdom into design requirements. Every neighborhood has winter community centers. Buildings require cozy spaces. Loneliness prevention became infrastructure. Cultural knowledge became architecture. Wisdom became policy. Sports culture intensified around winter activities. Minnesota wild hockey became religion. Olympic winter sports training centers attracted global athletes. Ice fishing tournaments drew millions in betting. Ski hills operated November through April. Winter sports weren't recreation, they were identity. Being good at winter became matter of civic pride. Athletic culture and survival culture merged. Excellence in cold weather sports meant excellence at being Minnesotan. The fashion industry relocated partially to Minneapolis. Winter clothing became high technology. Smart fabrics adjust insulation based on temperature. Batteries heat strategic body zones. Fashion became functional, but designers made it beautiful. Cold weather couture emerged as genre. New York Fashion Week added Minneapolis Winter Fashion Week. Necessity drove aesthetics. Function shaped beauty. Survival wear became high fashion. Limitation produced innovation. Surprisingly, homelessness decreased dramatically. Not through displacement, but through housing. Winter kills quickly. Society couldn't tolerate outdoor homelessness. Housing first policies provided shelter unconditionally. But more than policy, culture shifted. Everyone knows cold is dangerous. Leaving people outside became unthinkable. Winter created moral clarity. When environment is immediately lethal, society protects vulnerable. Cold created compassion. Harsh climate drove humane policy. Energy systems became revolutionary. Cold means cheap cooling for data centers. Frozen lakes store thermal energy. Winter wind generates massive power. Minneapolis became energy exporter despite harsh climate, or because of it. The city that once consumed energy fighting winter now generates surplus from winter. Adversity became asset. Disadvantage became advantage. The climate that should have bankrupted the city made it rich. Reframing changed everything. Immigration patterns inverted. People from Russia, Scandinavia, Canada, and Mongolia found Minneapolis familiar. Cold-adapted populations thrived. Meanwhile, people from Texas and Arizona struggled. Climate refugees from heat discovered cold is equally challenging. Adaptation isn't automatic. Minneapolis developed cultural competency training, teaching newcomers not just how to dress, but how to think about winter. Survival is technical and psychological. Both require education. The restaurant scene became unexpectedly vibrant. Root vegetables and preserved foods inspired creativity. Chefs created winter cuisine as distinct genre. Fermentation arts, hot cocktails, comfort food elevated to art form. Dining culture adapted to season. But also, restaurants became social infrastructure. Where else gathered during long nights? Food culture thrived because social need was acute. Dining wasn't luxury. It was psychological necessity. Restaurants serve connection as much as food. Construction industry evolved completely. Building in -20 requires innovation. Heated construction sites. Cold-resistant materials. Winter-specific techniques. Minneapolis construction workers are highest paid in nation because skills are specialized. But also, construction season extended year-round through technology. Winter no longer stops building. The industry that once hibernated 6 months now operates 12. Obstacle became solvable problem. Limitation became managed variable. Aging population thrived surprisingly. Elderly people who should have fled cold stayed and flourished. Heated skyways meant mobility year-round. Community care prevented isolation. The culture of checking on neighbors saved lives. Cold weather created social cohesion that improved elder care. Older residents report feeling safer, more connected, more valued than in warmer climates where they felt isolated. Community matters more than climate. Cold built community. Warmth without connection is lonelier than cold with caring. Libraries became community centers for survival. They provide warmth, light, and gathering space during dark months. But they also evolved into winter wellness hubs, light therapy rooms, seasonal depression support groups, cold weather skills workshops. Libraries saved lives not through books, but through being open, warm, public spaces during hard months. The institution mattered more than the collection. Space mattered more than content. Being there mattered more than what was there. Water management was surprisingly easy. Unlike the Southwest, Minneapolis has abundant water. Lakes everywhere, rivers flowing, snow providing constant supply. The water crisis devastating other regions never touched Minneapolis. Abundance became advantage. The resource scarcity defining modern America doesn't exist here. Water wealth made economic development easy. Infrastructure investment went to innovation instead of basic survival. Having fundamentals covered allows focusing on advancement. Advantage compounds. Political culture shifted leftward. Harsh climate requires collective action. Libertarian individualism doesn't work at -20. You need government clearing roads, maintaining heat infrastructure, providing emergency services. Climate made government necessity obvious. Shared challenges require shared solutions. Political ideology adapted to environmental reality. Minneapolis proved that conservative economics don't survive harsh winters. Collective action isn't political preference, it's survival requirement. Environment determines politics. The question everyone asks, is Minneapolis the future? Will northern cities inherit Earth? Maybe. Climate models suggest continued migration north. Minneapolis might be blueprint, but it's not replicable everywhere. Requires water infrastructure investment, cultural shift toward embracing hardship. Not every cold place will become Minneapolis. Some will fail. Success requires more than geography. It requires vision, investment, and acceptance that future doesn't look like past. Minneapolis succeeded because it adapted instead of resisted. Dating culture adapted interestingly. Long winters create intimacy quickly. Relationships form faster when you're bundled together indoors. But also higher quality. You can't fake compatibility through 6 months of darkness. Bad relationships end quickly. Good ones deepen. Winter is relationship filter. Only strong connections survive seasonal stress. Marriage rates increased, but divorce rates decreased. Climate created natural selection for relationship quality. Winter kills weak bonds. It strengthens real ones. Surprisingly, crime rates dropped. Cold discourages crime. Harder to escape, harder to hide, harder to function. But also community cohesion increased. Neighbors know neighbors. Social bonds prevent antisocial behavior. Minneapolis became one of America's safest cities, not through policing, but through community. Safety comes from connection. Crime decreases when people care about each other. Cold weather forced social bonds. Social bonds reduce crime. Climate inadvertently created safety. Pets adapted fascinatingly. Dogs love winter. Huskies and Malamutes especially. Pet ownership increased. But cats disappeared outdoors permanently. Breeds evolved for cold, thicker coats, higher metabolism. The city has dog parks heated and illuminated year-round. Pet culture thrived because animals handle cold better than humans expected. Walking your dog at -10 became normal. Animals adapted. Humans followed. Sometimes nature knows better than us. Music scene evolved unique character. Long winters create hunger for live performance. Venues packed November through March. But the music changed, darker, introspective, emotionally intense. Minneapolis sound became recognizable genre. Winter music, cold weather blues, dark season folk. Art reflected environment. Creativity emerged from climate. The sound of Minneapolis is sound of surviving winter. Music as climate expression. Art as environmental adaptation. Alcohol culture became controversial. Winter darkness drives drinking. Alcoholism rates initially increased. But city implemented aggressive public health response, free addiction treatment, harm reduction programs, social alternatives to bars. The Nordic approach, don't criminalize, treat as health issue. Alcoholism decreased not through prohibition, but through care. Problem acknowledged became problem addressed. Minneapolis proved that compassion works better than punishment. Health approach beats moral approach. Technology sector exploded. When you can solve winter, you can solve anything. Minneapolis became Silicon Valley of climate adaptation. Startups focused on cold weather problems, battery technology, thermal engineering, weatherproof materials, seasonal depression treatments. Venture capital flooded in. Exits to major companies generated wealth. Tech billionaires emerged. But unlike California, Minneapolis tech wealth funded public infrastructure. Culture of shared responsibility persisted. Success was distributed, not hoarded. Parenting culture shifted dramatically. Kids need outdoor time even in winter. Schools have mandatory outdoor recess regardless of temperature. There's no bad weather, only bad clothing became educational philosophy. Children learn cold tolerance young. Helicopter parenting decreased. Can't hover when kids are bundled in snowsuits. Independence increased. Kids become capable earlier. Winter childhood creates resilient adults. Hardship builds character. Protection creates fragility. Minneapolis chose hardship. Real estate patterns inverted. Lakefront property, once premium, became less valuable. Too exposed to cold winds. Interior neighborhoods with wind protection became desirable. South-facing lots commanded premiums for passive solar. Property value reflected cold weather functionality, not summer aesthetics. Market adapted to reality. Preferences changed with climate. What was valuable became obsolete. What was ignored became precious. Real estate as climate adaptation. Surprisingly, outdoor swimming thrived. Heated outdoor pools open year-round. Swimming in warm water, while snow falls, became quintessential Minneapolis experience. It sounds contradictory, but captures the city's philosophy. Embrace winter while conquering it. Don't retreat indoors, modify outdoors. The pools are engineering marvels and cultural statements. Defiance through adaptation. Victory through innovation. Minneapolis doesn't surrender to winter. It swims through it. Community gardens evolved into winter greenhouses. Growing food became year-round activity. Neighborhoods maintained communal heated, growing spaces. Gardening culture shifted from summer hobby to essential winter activity. People need connection to growth during dark months. Watching plants thrive while snow falls provides psychological comfort. Gardens became therapy. Growing food became mental health intervention. Agriculture as medicine. Cultivation as cure for seasonal depression. Transit workers became honored profession. Keeping buses running at -20 is heroic. Snow removal crews work brutal hours. These aren't minimum wage jobs anymore. They're skilled, well-paid, respected positions. Society recognized that infrastructure workers are survival workers. Compensation and respect followed. Minneapolis proved that valuing essential workers isn't idealism, it's necessity. When their work means life or death, payment and respect must reflect that reality. Addiction to warmth emerged as unexpected problem. People became psychologically dependent on heated spaces, unable to tolerate even mild cold. Thermal addiction is real phenomenon. Bodies and minds adapted to constant warmth. Brief cold exposure triggers anxiety. Minneapolis implemented cold tolerance programs, gradual exposure, therapy, rebuilding comfort with discomfort. Humans need some hardship. Constant comfort creates psychological fragility. Adaptation requires challenge. Resilience requires stress. Funeral traditions adapted. Frozen ground makes burial difficult. Cremation rates increased. But also, ice funerals emerged. Bodies preserved in ice sculptures during winter, buried in spring thaw. Death rituals incorporated season. Mourning adapted to climate. The cultural creativity in adapting ancient rituals to harsh environment demonstrates human flexibility. Death is universal but practices are local. Climate shapes even how we handle mortality. Environment influences everything, including endings. Tourism economy boomed counterintuitively. People from hot climates vacation in Minneapolis to experience winter safely. Cold tourism packages include winter survival training, ice activities, northern lights viewing. Tourists love experiencing cold, knowing they'll return to warmth. The exotic became profitable. Minneapolis marketed what it once apologized for. Winter became attraction. Cold became commodity. Liability became asset through reframing. Marketing conquered stigma. The generational divide fascinates researchers. Elders remember when winter was liability. Young adults see it as feature. Children don't know anything else. 3 generations with completely different relationships to same climate. Elders endure. Adults embrace. Children just exist in it naturally. The psychological shift happened in real time. Cultural adaptation visible across generations. Climate relationship as generational identity. Environment as generational divider. Corporate culture adapted to winter reality. Flexible schedules accommodate snow days. Remote work is default during blizzards. Companies learned rigidity doesn't work at -20. Nature sometimes wins. Businesses that adapted thrived. Those that demanded presence regardless of whether lost employees. Market selected for flexible employers. Winter became filter for good companies. Climate tested management philosophy. Nature revealed which companies respect reality versus ideology. Surprisingly, faith communities thrived. Harsh climate drives spiritual seeking. Why does winter exist? What's purpose of hardship? Religious attendance increased, not decreased. But theology evolved. Less prosperity gospel, more suffering acceptance. Winter Christianity, winter Islam, winter Buddhism. Faiths adapted teachings to environment. Spirituality grounded in climate reality, not abstract comfort. Religion became practical wisdom about enduring. Faith as survival tool, not just salvation promise. The addiction to seasons emerged. People who experienced 4 distinct seasons became psychologically dependent on them. Moving to endless summer climates caused distress. Seasonal change became psychological need. Humans evolved with seasons. Removing them creates subtle dysfunction. Minneapolis proved seasons matter to mental health. Cyclical time is healthier than eternal sameness. Nature's rhythm grounds human psychology. Seasonal change isn't just weather, it's psychological infrastructure. The verdict on Minneapolis is remarkably positive. By nearly every metric, health, happiness, safety, innovation, community, it excels. Climate that should have destroyed it made it stronger. Adversity created advantage. Hardship built community. Winter forged resilience. But success isn't replicable without specific factors. Water abundance, cultural willingness to embrace cold, investment in infrastructure, acceptance of collective solutions. Minneapolis succeeded through combination of geography and choice. Luck and wisdom together. Yet challenges persist. Not everyone adapted. Some refugees from heat never acclimated psychologically. Return migration began around 2075. People choosing heat danger over cold discomfort. Climate preference is deeply personal. No perfect climate exists. Trade-offs are universal. Minneapolis offers stability, community, innovation. It demands tolerance for cold, darkness, seasonal rhythm. The city works brilliantly for those who accept terms. It's unbearable for those who can't. Geography is still destiny. Personality is geography match. The arts community developed unique aesthetic. Ice sculpture reached fine art status. Winter photography became genre. Music incorporated seasonal themes. Literature explored cold as metaphor and reality. Minneapolis art is recognizable. It looks like and sounds like winter. Environment shaped expression completely. Art became climate documentation. Creativity became environmental adaptation. The city created cultural output matching its physical reality. Authentic art reflects authentic place. Minneapolis art is cold art. Unapologetically, beautifully. Infrastructure maintenance became sophisticated science. Roads that withstand freeze-thaw cycles. Pipes that never burst. Buildings that breathe in extreme temperature swings. The engineering knowledge developed in Minneapolis exports globally. Cities in Russia, Canada, and Scandinavia purchase Minneapolis expertise. Infrastructure became intellectual property. Knowledge became commodity. The city that mastered winter maintenance sells that mastery. Problem solved becomes product sold. Adversity conquered becomes advantage marketed. Retirement patterns shifted dramatically. Instead of fleeing to Florida, retirees stay in Minneapolis. Community bonds matter more than climate. Elders report feeling safer, more connected, more valued in Winter City than Sunbelt isolation. Active winter lifestyle keeps them healthy longer. Social cohesion prevents decline. Minneapolis proved that community trumps climate for successful aging. Warmth without connection is lonely. Cold with community is home. Geography matters less than belonging. Language evolved uniquely. Technical vocabulary for snow types expanded to dozens of words. Temperature gradations became precise. Cold weather terminology richness rivals Inuit languages. Language adapts to environment. What matters gets named. Minneapolis developed linguistic sophistication about winter matching its practical expertise. Words reflect reality. Environment shapes communication. Language as climate adaptation. Vocabulary as survival tool. Naming as mastery. The brewery culture adapted fascinatingly. Cold lagering happens naturally outdoors in winter. Minneapolis beer benefits from environmental advantages. Breweries tout naturally winter fermented as quality marker. The craft beer scene became winter-specific. Styles evolved for cold climate. Higher alcohol content, warming spices, comfort flavors. Beer culture and winter culture merged completely. Drinking became seasonal ritual. Brewing became climate expression. Alcohol as cultural adaptation to cold and darkness. Surprisingly, startup failure rates decreased. Winter forces planning. You can't wing it at -20. Entrepreneurs who survive winter have discipline, foresight, and resilience. Climate selects for business traits predicting success. Impulsive founders fail first winter. Prepared ones thrive. Minneapolis startup culture is less flashy but more sustainable than Silicon Valley ever was. Environment created natural selection for viable businesses. Climate as quality filter. Winter as business incubator through adversity. The marriage rate increased significantly. Winter forces intimacy quickly. Relationships deepen or die fast. No casual dating through -20 winters. Commitment happens earlier. But marriages last longer. Couples tested by winter. Before marriage, no compatibility. Climate became relationship filter. Winter stress reveals character. Shared hardship creates bonds. Minneapolis proved that difficult environments create stronger partnerships. Easy climates allow weak relationships. Hard climates demand real ones. Book clubs proliferated beyond anywhere else. Long dark nights create hunger for stories. Reading rates tripled national average. Libraries are packed. Literary culture thrives. Minneapolis became most literate city in America. Winter gives time. Darkness demands activities. Reading fills both needs. Literature became winter necessity. Books as companions through dark months. Stories as survival tools. Minneapolis proved that harsh climate creates rich intellectual culture. Limitation produces depth. The ultimate question: should other cities become Minneapolis? Can they? Should they try? Urban planners worldwide study the model. Some aspects are replicable: skyway systems, thermal technology, community focus. Others aren't: water abundance, cultural acceptance of cold, collective political culture. Minneapolis succeeded through unique combination of factors. Its template and exception simultaneously. Blueprint and unrepeatable success. Other northern cities can learn. Replication is impossible. Inspiration is valuable. Each place must find its own adaptation. Minneapolis 2080 stands as proof that climate change creates winners and losers geographically. The frozen north won while the Sun Belt burned. Winter became salvation. Cold became prosperity. Adversity became advantage. The city everyone pitied became the city everyone envies. Minneapolis didn't just survive climate change, it thrived because of it. This is the future, unpredictable, ironic, harsh but livable. Cold weather, hot innovation. Welcome to the city winter built. The North remembers. And the North prevailed. This has been Minneapolis 2080. Cold weather, hot innovation. Winter was weapon. Minneapolis made a tool. The question for your city: can you thrive in what's coming, or will you flee from it?